Hello y'all on YouTube, this is Rob with Rob's Nerdy Knives. Today I have a very special review impressions of a really cool knife that I got a chance to check around, again, thanks to the pass around group that I'm a part of. And appreciate Zach over at Zach Stuffs. Definitely go check out his channel if you haven't already. He allowed us to have a look at this knife and I'm really glad he did. This is a pretty cool knife. It's one of those knives that I heard about it. Everybody really just wanted to jump on top of them and tell them how terrible it was. And I had all the negative impressions about it and I thought they were insane when I first saw this. So let's talk about this. This is the Benchmade Narrows. All right, that's the name of the knife, Benchmade Narrows. The manufacturer is Benchmade. I don't know who necessarily is the designer. I think it's, well, there's a patent on there. They have a lot of website, but I don't know who specifically designed this. I don't really know. I think it might be an in-house. I'm sure there's some designer there. If you know, hey, feel free to comment down below. But it is made by Benchmade, so it's made in the USA. It is a USA-made knife. That's a big deal. If you didn't know that, that does mean things are more expensive when they're made in the USA because it costs more. Labor just is more expensive over here. And sometimes, usually the quality is going to be a little better. Not always, but usually, right? So let's talk about this knife. The handle and scales and material. So the scales here are titanium. They're very thin. I don't know if you can see that. Super, super thin. If you look on the inside, there is some milling for weight relief. So that's really quite interesting. Super light knife. We'll get into the measurements here in a second, but super, super thinly milled scales. And it is titanium. Is there any sort of bow or flex on that? Very little, but it's titanium, so it's flexible. It's not gonna, warp as much as steel. This is a steel clip. It is blue anodized along with all the screws on here. It's got a pivot, captive pivot, which is great. It does have thumb studs, a very abbreviated version because of how thin it is of the traditional Volcano thumb studs that Benchmade normally comes with, and obviously it's mill deep pocket carry clip. If this were my knife, I would absolutely get a Lynch clip for it because I tend to bend their steel clips pretty quick. My mini Adamas, the carbon fiber and magnet cut, I bent that clip so fast, and I went ahead and got a Lynch clip because it's titanium, it's more flexible, a little more forgiving for me. That's just me. If you have no issues with it, then maybe no need for you. But this is milled in a nice pattern, and it feels really good. It feels purposeful, like you have some traction, so that's nice, especially for as thin as this blade is. It is the axis lock. They call it the axis lock, but it doesn't have your traditional mega spring in there. It's a very unique spring. I can't take it apart. It's not my knife, but it does seem to have a spring that kind of pushes against the crossbar lock here, the axis bar here itself that rolls over the tang of the blade that keeps it in place, right? And then locks it in place. It kind of pushes it forward with the, I don't know, it's got like here and it kind of pushes it. I probably need to go to the website. I'm sure there's some diagrams for it, but it's not your traditional Omega springs, right? That's tied to the access bar itself. This pushes the access bar as far as opposed to where it's attached to the ends of the access bar and it's attached to part of the frame itself, and that spring is pushing that apart. This is a little different, right? So, but it works well. Works really well for such a thin construction. I like the axis lock here. This is kind of like a slanted little jimped little I don't know what you call it, axis bar studs or whatever, ends, whatever. It's got a nice little part there. And the nice thing about this and the way it works and it's falling down the track is I can work this one-handed operation, right? So this works one-handed really, really well. So, like unlike most, axis bar, you kind of have to use both at the same time to make sure it's nice and even. So there is that, right? It's larger for being such a thinner knife, so you just keep that in mind. What else? All right, so the steel. It is M390 blade steel, so that's the Bowler steel, which is equivalent to CPM 20CV. So pretty good steel. I assume the heat treat is going to be done well. I actually have a Benchmade bug out that's with the black, and it has a aluminum milled scale. That particular steel is M390 as well, but it is coated in a black, so this is raw. I can tell you it's nice and sharp. It looks like a pretty decent edge on both sides. This might be a hair longer at the very tip, but I do like that. And the action here on phosphor bronze washers is ridiculous. No blade play. And when it locks in there, you can see the typical axis lock in. pulls it right in. You see it once it goes over that tang of that blade and it pushes in, it's definitely in place. Now you do get a little movement, but that's the typical axis lock. That's you see how that's rounded at the end of the blade? There's like a little depression relief in there. That's what pushes it in here. And it's not locked so you can overcome it with some pressure. But once you overcome it, watch this. You see how that lock bar moves? That's how the axis lock moves, right? So once you move it, it's because it's touching that. But if you wanted it really strong and a strong spring, it can make this a little uncomfortable for some people because it might give you a nice snappy flip, but then pulling the bar can be really, really tight. And I can tell you, based on another knife that I have, an Olin, the AXL Goat, I'm pulling it out right now. It is a nice competitor. It's a crossbar lock, and I do like this a lot. But this one is a little tight to get into. It's hard to get to at times, right? So, and you got to time this one right because it's a little heavier blade. So there we go. I just got to make sure I clear it right. But because this is heavier, it's definitely takes a little harder to overcome sometimes. And sometimes if I release it too soon, boy, it comes up and stops the blade right away. So you see that? I have to really make sure I hold it down because the springs on here are just really tough. Whereas on here, they're not as much, but it is so thin, and I think it makes sense. It works on this type of blade, how thin the steel stock is. I mean, I don't know. I like it. So that's how it closes. You relieve that. You have thumb studs for deployment. You have the axis lock to open it, but you can, like with any axis lock, I can use the axis lock to open and close it. So you can do the open and close thing that you can do with axis lock. I like that as well. So that's cool. All right, so let's do some measurements on this guy. Let's find out how much it weighs, because that's really the really cool factor here about this one, is the weight of the knife. So it measures in at 2.40 ounces. It's listed on site at 2.41 ounces, so it's right on target. 2.40 ounces. That is like nothing. It's like air, right? Now let's look at the size, because your handle to blade ratios, it blows them away, right? A lot of times people want 2.4. It should be at least a 2.4 larger blade. So let's look at the overall length of the knife. The overall length of the knife is at 8 inches. From the tip to the very end, it's right at 8 inches. Now, it lists overall length at 7.46. I'm not exactly sure why they listed that, but I get 8 inches from tip to end, right? So we'll look at the grip area. Right here, we do have about 4 inches, especially if you use this. That can work well. If you're wanting to go right here, you're about 3.5 inches. Now, the nice thing is if I had really large hands, I can still get my hand right there and it's comfortable. But as large hands I have right here, I can absolutely get my hand on here. I'm on the edge. Even if I was over the edge, it's still comfortable enough. Now, can I choke up a little bit? You can, but you got to be careful. It's a trigger choke up, and you got to make sure you don't fall into that choil and get yourself cut, because it's a sharp blade, right? So you could hold it up here. I mean, it could maybe for a pinch grip, you can kind of hold there like that. It would work, right? But it's not ideal. So I really feel that's your overall length there. So let's go ahead and look at the measurements of the blade. All right, so the blade length we're looking at is going to be just under 3.5 inches, right? So because if you go from the tip to the handle scales, there's that. And let's measure it like someone measures the whole cutting length. We are right at, I want to say, 3 and 7/16 of an, yeah, 7/16 of an inch. I would say 3 and 7/16 of an inch. It's just under 3.5 inches. Just under 3.5 inches. I mean, it's pretty impressive for 2.40 ounces. You got just under 3.5 inches. I mean, that's pretty good, I think. All right, so I'm gonna have to leave it open because it's so thin. Just keep it balanced. Let's figure this out. It's definitely under. It's definitely over 100 thousandths of an inch, right? So let's see how much lower it is. All right, so we're at 0.00, we're at 0.08, so it's 80 thousandths of an inch. So 0.08 inches. I mean, that's not even 1/10 of an inch. That is incredibly thin. Typically, knives are like 0.12 inches. So, I mean, that's like, goodness, that's close to 33 to 50% thinner than most blades. That's pretty phenomenal. Now, it's great It's really done well, and that takes a lot of precision to get there. It's got a beautiful swedge on there. I like that. A good jimping, very functional jimping. Gives you some places to hold on to with the traction, and I think that's important for a thinner knife. Beautifully chamfered all the way around, so there's nothing sharp to get a hold of, which I think is a very important touch, especially for a knife this price range. It does have a lanyard hole, so you definitely can use that. It is swappable left and right-handed. Right now it's right-hand tip up only, but you can move the clip over here. I think that's pretty cool, all right? So what does this fall into? It's $522. I thought it was $560 or something. I think the Benchmade site, it's way more. But if you go to a retailer like White Mountain Knives or Blade Ops or GP Knives or Blade HQ, they have this knife for $522. That's the retail price. Now, sometimes you can get a discount on it. If you can get 10% off, I think it gets into the realm of more reasonableness. It is pretty high. I'm not going to lie to you. It's pretty high. But the thing about a knife is it's valued at what you're willing to pay for it. Are some people willing to pay for it? So this definitely falls into the high-end knife. It's under $500, but it's over $300. So it's a high-end knife. It's not a custom mid-tech knife, but it's definitely that. It's not gold class, which is Benchmade's mid-tech custom kind of line, if you will. They sometimes use some of the same brands, but they do a lot of hand touches on those, right? So this is definitely like sub-gold class. It's like the interim between the two. So definitely in that realm. I think that's interesting. I like that. So with the purpose, EDC, absolutely EDC. I think it's a great knife. Is it hard use? It all depends what you mean by hard use for this EDC. It's a thinner, lighter knife. It's meant to be very concealed, very light use, I don't think you're going to go out and chop and break with a log and break logs or something. No, you're not going to pry with this knife. Absolutely not. It's thinner, but it's, by the way, nice and dead nut center, which I found really fascinating. Retained that the entire time. No blade play, so the whole thing has just been solid as I've been flicking it here at the desk. It's really, really been a joy. So, yeah, I mean, hard use for what you're getting and the thickness and thinness of it. Keep that in mind. It definitely could be hard use for that. So, if that's okay with you, I would say, yeah, that's fine. But if it's not, then, take care of it. I wouldn't go out batoning and, like chopping logs and wood. Get a fixed blade, get an axe. Don't use it for this. But I think it's a great knife. I mean, use it for everything I do. Open dog food, cat litter, mulch, fertilizer, cases of water, Christmas presents, anniversary presents, birthday presents. It can do all of that and do it well. And Amazon boxes, obviously, can do all of that really well. Is it a collection piece? I think it could be absolutely a collection piece. This really falls close into the collection piece, especially if you're a big Benchmade collection piece guy. If you like Benchmade and you're a big fan, you're going to love this. If you're on the fence and you love the aesthetic, I think you'll still really enjoy this. I am still on the fence. I know some of you guys are like, it's too much. It's what I hear you. I agree. But if I can get 10% off and get this at a reasonable price, like, $450, I feel like this knife would be a banger at $400, $425. $450, I think, is a reasonable price. I think that would be a better target price, honestly. I think they would have less, people still balk at it, but I think for what they did here, I think it's a more reasonable price. Now, I don't know if they can't do that in the USA because of how thin it is. It is more expensive to mill thin things like this. It's more expensive to mill thinner steel like that. When you have thinner steel and you do heat treats, they can warp. All sorts of things can happen with thinner stuff. So there's a cost involved. It's absolutely cost involved in a thinner blade like this, and you just have to absorb that and understand that. Some people don't get it. A big, thin knife, it's less materials, it should be cheaper. Not necessarily. When you're doing precision milling and you're getting this beautiful action like this and there's no blade play and it's nice and solid. And look, this is phosphor bronze. I can drop shut this on phosphor bronze. Now, granted, can I do that on other phosphor bronze? Yes, I can. But they all are high precision. But notice the thickness between the two. This is much thicker than this one. This is still pretty thin, relatively speaking, but it's not as thin as that one. So, yeah, there is that. All right, so design, handle, the jimping, the thumb studs. Is there a fuller? There's no fuller on this one. Is there a clip? Yeah. So I would say the handle is really nice. It works. It's thin. It gives you some traction. I think that's important for a knife that's thin so you can really use it and work with it. I think that's great, right? I would say also for the jimping is very functional, works well. It's not overly aggressive. It's not going to tear your skin off, right? The thumb studs work, and they're appropriately sized for a knife this thin. I'm really glad they did that. It's a very relative size that works really, really well for this knife. So that's cool. No fuller on this, but could I get a middle finger flick? Absolutely. You got a bonus flick on this one. Look, middle finger flick, absolutely bonus all day long. I do like that. I think that's kind of cool. That's like, you know, you get a little bonus flick with a Benchmade. That's not, you don't normally get that sometimes because overcoming the axis lock is a little challenging. So I like that. All right, so no fuller. We talked about the clip. There's a lanyard hole, obviously, but I wish this was titanium. At this price range, you really should do titanium. One other big gripe that I have at this price range. Please, Benchmade, do T6s. It would really be nice. Now, if there's some reason why you couldn't do a T6, fine. You know, if it's too small, too tight, I would love to see T6s, especially when you're this tight and trying to have these tolerances. T6s give you a more secure, I think, setting of the knife, keeping it together, keeping it fastened and secure. So that's my personal opinion on that. And people may not agree, but that's where I stand on that. Opening and closing is phenomenal. Opening and closing is great. This is way better than I expected. I was very pleasantly surprised. You know, you can balk at this, you can say the price, all that stuff, but it works really well. It's got great action. It really does. You can't deny that. As much as you may not like it, as much as you may be angry at the price, I get all of that. But it's still a great knife. It really is. It is done really, oops, missed my thumb slip there, because they're small. Sometimes you miss them because they're small. It's not because it doesn't work. It's just because stuff fall. Sometimes, you know, I'm a little higher here, so I do that, and then I miss it. Well, here, I've got to make sure I make that contact and not scoop off the thumb stud first, right? When you have bigger thumb studs, you can't push all the way through, all the way out there. Like, if it's bigger like that, I got to make sure I go all the way through with that, right? So that's just a factor of the size and the thickness, I think. All right, so opening and closing is phenomenal. Fidget factor. Well, you know, it's got an axis lock. It's got the thumb stud, so, you know, that's pretty good in itself. But the bonus flick, I mean, I'm sorry. This gets into the realm of 6 because it does it really well. This opening and closing, the thumb studs, the axis lock, it's executed so well. This is the perfect axis lock bar for an axis lock this thin. I got to tell you, it's outstanding, right? And then the thumb studs are absolutely the most perfect size thumb stud for a knife this thick. And then the fact that you cut this flat grind all the way up here to the top where I can get my finger in and do a full reverse flick. Now it's not flat grind, it's just it's not a flat grind. It stops right here. But you can get your finger on here. There's enough traction in this satin finish. I can reverse flick it. Yeah, that's really, really, really nice. So you get a 6 out of 10 on that. So fidgety goodness for this knife, you're going to hate me for saying this, it's 100. It's executed really, really well. It is. Whether you like it or not, you feel like it's overpriced, you feel Benchmade's lost their mind, I get all of that. I do. I get it all. It's still executed really well. It is done outstandingly. And that I'm not a Benchmade fanboy. I'm not. I have 2 Benchmades. For a while I had a lot of Benchmades. I sold them all. I have a Bug Out and I have a Mini Adamas. And those are 2 really big Benchmades that I really like out of everything I've ever had. Love those 2, but they're very specific variations. 535R4, which is the aluminum scales with an M390 blade steel. Love that variation, really nice, right? Had I gotten a really nice titanium scales, I could have gotten something else, but I wanted something besides the S30V. I wanted a higher premium steel. Secondly, the Mini Adamas is in Magna Cut. Fantastic knife. Really, really enjoying that one. So this would be like the 3rd one that I might like to get into my collection. It's just a little expensive right now. It's just out of my range. But I think it's really cool. If I sold a few knives, would I get this? Yeah, I would. I really would. So based on all of that, my overall thoughts and final thoughts, you're going to freak out on this. You may disagree with me to high heaven. I get it. I get it, and I respect you for it. I'm not disagreeing with you. I hear you. I respect your opinion. Hopefully you respect mine at least. You know, you may disagree with me, but it's okay we can agree to disagree. I'm going to recommend this knife. I think it's absolutely done so well. It's executed so well for what they did. I think the most ideal thing is, you know, get the regular $522 price, find a place where you can get 10% off, buy it for the $470. At $470, I think it's a very doable knife. $450 would be ideal. $400 would be crazy, ridiculous, great deal. So if it ever went on sale for $400, I mean, jump on it, right? I think that's a steal deal for this knife. $470, I think, would be ideal. You know, I would get it if I could do that again, right? $470, I think, is a great deal. $522. If you really, really, really love the aesthetic, get it. It's up to you. If that's when you really want to get into your collection, I would get it. I don't hate this enough to say I wouldn't consider the 522. 470 would be much better. 450 would be even better. 400 would be no-brainer. So, but I'll just tell you, $470. You know, if you can get the 10% off, I think it's pretty much a great deal. So definitely consider that if you're interested right now. I would definitely, so I recommend this knife. I think you definitely should consider it. I think it's definitely worth something to get into your collection. Yeah, again, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I know a lot of you are going to disagree. I've heard them over and over. I know some people are just so angry, and I don't know if you're angry because you feel like Benchmade betrayed you. I get it. Like I can't, you know, I would love to have gotten the bailout, the titanium bailout, but I'm not paying $500 for that. That is so overpriced. Get the regular bailout at $270. You can go buy yourself some Rockscale Design scales, and you're still $150 cheaper than their version. My recommendation, I think, you know, I think that's a little overpriced. I think for what this does, it does a lot of things very differently than any other knife. It is so thin and it's done well, and everything fits together so well. I think it's worth that. Okay. So again, love to hear your thoughts. You know, let's be respectful, even if you disagree. Let's be respectful of one another, because some people are going to love it. Some people aren't. Some people have already bought it and enjoy it, and it's okay. They can enjoy their knife. And guess what? I may buy it and enjoy it too. And you can disagree with me, but it doesn't mean we don't have to continue to be friends. It doesn't mean we have to stop, you know, and respecting one another, listening to one another, and learning from one another, right? It just means that we find some things we don't agree on. I have several of my subscribers, I consider them like friends, who have taste in some knives that are just way outside of my aesthetics. That doesn't mean I feel like I can't be their friends anymore. I mean, some of the knives they buy, I think are over the top. They don't fit me. They're not my aesthetic, and I get it. But that's okay. That's okay. We don't have to agree. And I'm sure some people think some of my designs are either boring or simple or just really kind of squirrely or whatever, right? I get it. I get it. But that's okay. That's why there's so many knives out there. We can all agree to disagree, right? So let's enjoy our knives. Appreciate what you see. I mean, I can still, even if you don't like this knife, if you get a chance to handle it, you have to agree. You have to agree. At some point, some of the build quality of this is really phenomenal. And I got to tell you, I know some people feel like this thing's going to fall apart. I don't know. I don't know. Looking at this, looking at the quality, looking at some of the things and how it's built, I don't think I can tell you that. I do not honestly think that I could tell you that this thing's going to fall apart. I really don't. I would disagree with you on that, honestly. I feel like it's pretty good. For as light and thin as this is, I think this has the potential to really do a lot of work and be a surprisingly nice knife. Yeah, I know it's not the review and the recommendation you expected me to give. It wasn't what I expected to say after handling it. It completely turned me around. You can see my unboxing. I go from like, I'm totally whatever, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I don't hate this, and to the end where I'm like, well, I don't know, I'm kind of torn by this, and then finally to like in this review, I'm like, yeah, I like this thing, I really do. Yeah, I would like to get it to be a little cheaper, absolutely, no questions asked, but I really do like this knife a lot. So there you go. You can agree or disagree. We'll leave it at that. We'll have our conversations. Maybe we'll talk about it on the live stream, you know, all that good stuff. So anyways, thanks so much for watching today. If you found this content fun, interesting, worthwhile, entertaining, or informative, would you please consider hitting the like button down below? And if you've already hit that like button, would you please consider hitting the subscribe button? Subscribing and liking the videos really helps out the channel, allows me to grow, be able to produce more content, do more things, ultimately do more things for you guys. So thank you. Thank you to every one of you guys who liked, subscribe, and watch the videos. I so appreciate it. Seriously, I do. Thank you to you. And if you haven't already, hit that notification button so you can be notified of future content as soon as it's dropped. And also to all my channel members, thank you, channel members. You guys rock. You're awesome. I appreciate every single one of you. And if you haven't already become a channel member and you're interested, maybe check out the link down below. I would love to have you. Really would be awesome if you're on the edge, maybe thinking about supporting the channel. I would welcome you and I would appreciate it. So thank you. Finally, if you haven't already checked me out over on Instagram, would you please go over there and maybe give me a follow and check me out over there at robs_nerdy_knives. Again, that's on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Thanks so much for watching today. Have a great day and a great week. Bye.